Good morning, St. Francis. It is Wednesday, February the 17th, 2021. It is Ash Wednesday 2021. Coming to you from the berm that separates Leesville Road from the church property proper, here on at the side transept. I think that this is the transept where St. Francis' statue is. But also here where the shrine to St. Ignatius of Loyola is, again, honoring the Jesuits, Father Jim English, first pastor here at St. Francis. And then behind me is the Brook Noga tree, the memorial tree for Brook Noga, a dogwood, which will be blossoming quite soon. A little bit of a, not necessarily barren landscape, but it's a little bit of an empty landscape. Again, we're getting ready to blossom forth with all kinds of spring flowers, but perhaps an appropriate place to begin looking at Ash Wednesday. And a number of things on this Ash Wednesday. Again, the remarkableness of this year, of everything we've been experiencing, again, of this year since last year, not just of this year, but all these things that we've been experiencing this year. Ash Wednesday is no less kind of extraordinary in the sense that ashes will be placed on top of the head. And why? Well, because that's what it says in the books. That's what's supposed to be happening. We don't need a large cross on our foreheads to show that we are honoring Lent or God or whatever it is. Place them on top of the heads is also the ancient practice of placing ashes on the body of a human being on top of the head. And so we will do that today. But it's also important to understand, what this day again represents. While we say this is the beginning of the Lenten journey, this is not necessarily the beginning of Lent. Lent begins on the first Sunday of Lent, and so we wait until the first Sunday of Lent to begin it. And if you count from that first Sunday down to the morning, afternoon of Holy Thursday, you will get your 40 days of Lent, and then be happy that way. What these days that precede that first Sunday of Lent are basically an entrance into the disciplines. That's why they are not days of Lent. It's Ash Wednesday. Nothing about Lent in that title. But they are days to help us understand what it means to get into the rigors of Lent. And those rigors of Lent involve those three disciplines: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Again, important to know that, again, fasting is just today and Good Friday. That's all. Not asking much of us. It's easy, not heavy theology. It's also know, again, that the abstinence is all the Fridays. Okay. But what we don't really have to think about, again, is prayer and the almsgiving business. And again, the sense of what prayer does. Again, this opening ourselves up to God. Yes, the opening ourselves up to more and more of what it means to have a relationship with God. But what is the fruit of that relationship with God? Well, in reality, it is the relationships that we have with each other. That is what is major. That is what is important. That is why Jesus' last command is love one another, as difficult as that may seem to be. Our relationships with one another are the fruit of our relationship with God that is brought to perfection through prayer. To work on prayer means to work on these relationships. However difficult and challenging they may be, they need to be worked upon, because the dignity and worth of ourselves as human beings comes from the dignity and worth of our relationships with one another. The understanding of almsgiving sometimes is about writing checks and money, which is always very interesting because that's kind of what it is. But it is can also the sense of giving of ourselves and what have you. But with that idea of writing checks and money to charities and whatever it is, we think very much of that during Christmas and that Christmas season when we are told not to do anything like that. And yet in these months of January, February, and March, in the Northern Hemisphere especially, when weather can be brutal, winter can be brutal, want can be keenly felt, we don't often think about giving to charity, giving of ourselves, financially, money, of ourselves, whatever it is. And yet this is one of the disciplines of Lent. How do we give in this season when nobody perhaps ever thinks to give? And yet we as believers are asked to think differently. In all of this, we begin this Lenten journey conscious of what God has done for us. He is risen. Christ lives forever. And because of that, we can have a future despite whatever happens to us, whatever befalls us. We have nothing to fear. And so we put death on our heads to remind us of a God who gives life and allows that life to bring forth its beauty and wonder in the relationships we have with each other. May the Lord grant all of us this year a holy and fruitful Lent, and as always, give us that gift of peace.